So I received guidance that there was underneath Berlin, that there were some trapped souls and body parts that were used in another dimension to harvest energies and to keep souls from growing, and to feed the agenda. And now what I'm seeing is it's kind of like a very like a bleak kind of energetic zone, almost like a maybe a phantom space or something of that kind of sort. And it's full of soul fragments, souls, like body part things. And the pieces themselves have no awareness of where they belong or that they are stuck. They just feel maybe they feel something's off. But these pieces all fuel energy, meridians, ley lines, and it has something to do with imagination, with the planetary brain, and so it's like memory loss. What I'm really feeling intensely is memory loss. I'm just recording this because I just received all of these like information, and I know that I will forget them if I don't record it. So what I am seeing is the Berlin architecture. I'm seeing the Brandenburger Tor, and then I'm seeing the streets, how the streets are connecting certain how the Tor is connected to other architectural buildings or places that channel power in the city. Berlin is the capital, and it used to be divided, so it's really interesting because it's so like, it's very much, I don't know, it's just reminded me for a brief second of, you know, the split hemispheres of the brain, because there was kind of a wall in the city for a long time, and they really developed quite differently architecturally, but also the regime was quite different. So the hummingbird is upset in the background. Let's see what I can tap into next. Oh, now what I'm seeing is that it's connected to the Externsteine. When I was there, I felt a very strong presence of fairy and fairy tale energy, but also I felt a lot of and the imagination, but also I felt a lot of reversal energy. So what I was told is that the souls trapped under the city, like in the city area, are feeding reversal energies. And reversal energies are ones that have been flipped around to perpetuate suffering rather than allowing healing and more growth that brings us towards the architecture of life. So by flipping things around, it makes it easier for them to maintain a certain regime and keep the energies locked in place. So when I was at the Externsteine, there was I had a lot of visions of like the swastika in the trees and reversals and trapped fairy imagination kind of pieces. It's like very interesting. the imagination is incredibly powerful. So that's interesting, because I've lately become interested in politics, and now what I'm seeing is the parallel between me becoming interested in politics again, and how this was intentionally kind of taken, is like, it's almost like the imagination of people is taken away, because I mean, if you look at the word imagination is in it, Kara St. Louis talks about this too. I don't know a lot about it, but it's like the inner magician, our inner power in imagining things and co-creating reality from that point, that kind of childlike innocence point of creation, rather than having this agenda, this personal agenda. So it's like magic, beauty, like playfulness, this playfulness energy that is very much lost in Germany. So that is like the connection to the inner child, that like goofiness, and like everything is very serious. And seriousness is important, I'm not saying it's not, but is also the whole playfulness and being, having fun. And so there is, and I am getting the sense that it is male monads that have been kind of trapped in this kind of enmeshed, gritty kind of reality, virtual reality pocket dimension, whatever you want to call it. It's an energetic space in a holographic matrix that is locked off and sealed and kind of made invisible, so that people cannot perceive it, or they can't even perceive that a certain piece is missing somewhere else. So that can create suffering, but that can be fed through the energetic lines that people will be able to feel on some level, but they won't be able to know that it is actually that they're feeling. So it feeds a reversal grid. And so yes, a lot of souls trapped in the World War II matrix, and so they keep feeding this World War II matrix, which I don't know if tapped into before, is kind of is like a feeling of being still in like a concentration camp. Maybe not a visible one, but more an energetic one, which I have sensed before in Germany, where it's kind of like the work, work, work attitude, and like being locked in, and the perfectionism, and the never being good enough. It goes with religious programming too, but I felt that energy very strongly in Germany. So it's that kind of like Hitler and it could probably come from way earlier anyways. That energy is still running through that too. They could probably keep that energy alive through locking those souls in place, because they are stuck in that certain time when that was actually happening. So that would be a very sensible thing to do from their point of view. Horrid, obviously, but if you, that fear of being vulnerable, of not showing any emotional depth, vulnerability, fear, because as soon as you do, you are automatically scrutinized for it and seen as an inferior being and cast aside, because you no longer belong to the superior race. So by keeping souls stuck in this kind of vibration and energy, you can use it to funnel it through the nation. And even if other people may have no direct relationship to it, I guess on some level they can sense that, and because there is not a lot of awareness around where our thoughts and our emotions come from, and to a degree, I guess, more or less I'm assuming that most people are some kind of empathic or are affected by energies, unless you're completely dead and solid, disconnected. So this is interesting because then you can keep this running in circles forever and ever and ever. It's like a merry-go-round. So that's why it's important to release these trapped souls, and I can feel that there is like a frequency fence around it. There is an energy that is really angry with me that I have found this and really would prefer not to have this released. I guess the reason why I'm sharing this is because I'm sure that there are other people out there that have similar grid working assignments or experiences, and I feel like I've learned from other people. So maybe someone else has had a sneaking suspicion that something like this might be happening, and they see it and they're like, oh yeah. Or someone else may have had an experience that could help me. So I am going to research more into this, but this is incredibly interesting, because if a certain aspect of a soul is stuck, then the soul is also kind of stuck, and especially the masculine monad, if that is stuck, that doesn't mean it's only from men, but it's like the masculine aspect of us. So I have a feminine and a masculine, and it could make me feel like I'm always looking for a man, or like always looking for this, like, this, that kind of, it's very hard to explain. It's like you're sensing that there's something masculine missing, and it's not necessarily a man from the outside, because that can never fill the hole, but we can sense that there is a piece missing. And then what happens from the Externsteine, it's probably connected to the Golden Eagle grid, I would say, as well. The Externsteine is a very powerful energy vortex, but it's like you can see the two opposing energies of an innocent child that already feels like it's perfect in just the way it is, the carelessness, the lightheartedness, the joy, like thinking about fairy tales, and like the excitement that you can feel, and the giddiness. And then think about the opposing energy is like a war kind of torture chamber kind of energy, where you can never do anything right, and you're just always perpetually trying to fix yourself or make yourself better or perfect yourself. It's like a very opposing energy, like the inner child and that kind of energy. Like how can they kind of get together? So I guess on a certain level it could also influence the inner union energy, because they're in opposition to each other. Like there's a lot of force in that masculine energy, like forcing myself to be perfect, forcing myself, not trusting that the inner child and the soul actually have their own divine unfolding plan, right? So like, for instance, if you leave a child and just allow it to unfold and trust and give it the right kind of support, it has its own timing of unfolding. You can't push a flower to grow. It kind of has its own season to grow. That's why a lot of schools nowadays don't have one curriculum and go push, push, push. So it's very interesting how those energies feed our systems too, and how they go against the divine kind of energy, not the divine is so heavily loaded from the new age kind of movement, but what I'm saying is like our organic kind of energy of life and of joy and of fun and lightheartedness from the heart. So it's kind of an opposition. That energy is very much in opposition to that. So it kind of influences the merge between the masculine energy within ourselves and the child and the feminine energy, because they're very much like the masculine energy coming from that kind of energy would push and use force to get the child to unfold, to make it happen, to this, to that, rather than coming from this the trust perspective of the child is already perfect, and seeing that it's just a little person that is really already a big person, like already has a higher self, already has a divine purpose and all of these kinds of things. So it's very interesting how that can actually like really create a lot of push and pull and a lot of inner violence, inner conflict, and that is this like perpetuates the inner child's feeling of you're always too slow, and you're like never good enough, and that like push for perfection, because if you're not perfect, you're gonna die. Like that's what it was like if you were like a weak link, you were not really interesting. Like it's either you were interesting and you had potential, or you were like cast aside, like used for experiments or whatever it is. So if that energy is contained and kept alive and fed through the grid, then we're stuck. It's not just like the monad that's stuck, like the rest of us is stuck in that energy. So that's why it's important to open that dimensional field, return all of these aspects to rightful owner, not by myself. And then yes, I will have to inspect exactly what to do, but I shall do that, and if I have any more insights into that, I will report it back. But it's interesting because that's the capital. Berlin is the capital. So it's kind of like, it's the government. And the government has very much to do with authority and kind of power over population, and similar to God, it's like an authority in the church. It's like an authority, an entity that is and can have that a lot of us give power to, rather than being God's sovereign free beings. They attempt to take a lot of our power, but we also give it to them. So that's interesting, because Berlin is like, I see it as a creative center. It's like such a think tank of newness, but it's like I would actually call it the brain of Germany. Like there's a lot of like newness that's coming out, and there's a lot of newness that comes out of there, and yet there is this like old energy that's like kind of clinging to it. Yeah, so it's like reclaiming the body parts, sending them back, making them accessible so that people can reclaim their own body parts and their monads, and that then can shift people. So I'm going to do this later today, because now I have to go into my 3-dimensional job. Yeah, and I think it ties in with scrutiny, being scrutinized, and perpetually performance monitored. Because it's almost like that perpetual guilt tripping and shaming and all of that kind of stuff. It's all coming from a place of like, you need to survive, so you need to be pushed and like grow. And I think maybe it's not that bad anymore, but I definitely feel some of that still. Anyways. So nice. I love doing this kind of stuff. It feels so good. Oh, and the inability to actually feel anything, I feel like is like an aspect of that is stuck in the not being able to feel anything because the feelings are completely overwhelming and I can't actually feel anything. It's almost like a shock there, or the shock of feeling, like a shell shocked. It's like I can't feel any feelings because if I do, it's like it's just not safe. So I'll see what happens when I connect in and do that later tonight. So, and then maybe I will post this video. Okay. Thanks for watching. Hope you're well. And keep on keeping on.